This, I believe, is one of the most important sources of America's greatness. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country and every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams, we create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever close the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost.
Would soon be lost. You know, Anand, it's so interesting. That was in 89. In 90, 91, 92, you had Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who were immigrants. You look at Intel. You look at the rise of Google. You look at the rise of other tech companies, fueled in large part by what Ronald Reagan said right there. Even as Ronald Reagan was saying that, he was looking at the history from that date in 1989. He had no idea, and few had any idea, that it would be a new wave of immigrants that were about to change the face of America and the world with an IT revolution.
You know, it's rare for me to feel the emotion of wanting to smash the retweet button of Ronald Reagan's words. But what a moving yeah. clip you just showed. And I think it gets to this notion that we shouldn't be having a defensive conversation about immigration that starts with some amount of border chaos. We should have our own conversation from first principles about this is an extraordinary country. It is extraordinary for many reasons. Among the reasons it is extraordinary, it is a country built of the world, from every part of the world, right? And I have had the fortune as a journalist, as a foreign correspondent, to visit dozens of countries. And I've enjoyed all these countries I've been to. But I've actually never been to any other country that truly aspired to be a country made of the world. So when you're in France, there's immigrants in France, but it is not like the United States. It is not a country made of the world. It is a country with Frenchness, right? A lot of countries in the world, people don't even know. They don't even have birthright citizenship. If you live there, if you're born there, and your parents are from there, you still don't necessarily become a citizen. Eric Liu, a friend of mine, Chinese American, wrote in a memoir called The Chinaman's Chance about his family's been in China thousands and thousands of years. His parents left, came to America. He said if he wanted to go back and become Chinese, he couldn't. 5,000 years of loyal living in China, 1 or 2 generations in the United States. Becoming Chinese is not a thing. Becoming Indian is not a thing. Becoming American is something that we do to 1 million people every year. We've done it under Republicans, under Democrats. My family came here 47 years ago. I think we've had a pretty good run of contribution to this country, except my own. And I think we need to not just react to whack-a-mole crises ginned up by fascists, but actually own this notion that our blood is better with the blood of many people in it. Our country is better when more people are here. We have built everything we can because we have every kind of idea, every kind of contribution mixing together. And people who don't have a heart, people who are miserly, or people who are cynically trying to raise money off of hatred don't belong in the American story.
And you know, it's
perfect.
Beautiful. It's beautiful,
100%.
And again, embracing this concept, like you said, don't play whack-a-mole. I've always said I think it's extraordinary that my family has been in this country probably about 400 years. The people in my family through the years that have gone through it, we've probably been here 400 years. You know, and what I find remarkable is that today somebody will raise their hand, a new immigrant, newly arrived. They will take an oath and they will become an American. And at that moment, there will be every bit as American as anybody in my family who's been here for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. If you don't think that is beautiful, then you don't understand America. And Rev, speaking of beauty, American beauty, I still think it's remarkable that it was black women, the very people who have the least reason, at times it seems, if you look at our history, to stand up and defend Madisonian democracy. But it was black women in Atlanta. It was black women in Philadelphia, black women in Detroit, black women in Wisconsin back in 2020 that I believe, and a lot of people believe, a lot of historians believe, stepped up and saved Madisonian democracy. You talk about just an extraordinary legacy and the extraordinariness of that. You saw it up close, Rev. And that's the America we strive to be, not the America of hate that Donald Trump is trying to promote right now.
Absolutely. And I might say black women stood up, voted, stood in line for miles,
yes,
and to vote in Georgia and in Wisconsin and other places. And many of them believing in an America that they and their parents and grandparents may not have lived in equally, but they believed in it anyway. And as I watched, as you played that tape of President Ronald Reagan, as a young activist, I marched on Reagan. I disagreed with Reagan. But what happened to that Reagan? I mean, the eloquence that he gave and the kind of moral standing that he gave in that statement and in how he dealt with immigration, to go from that to someone that is the standard bearer of the same political party, talking about people poisoning people. We need to really look at how did we get here and how do we return back. I never thought I'd say it, but at least to the era of Reagan and the Republican Party.